Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. So I apologize in advance because there are people talking on the phone in the other room and I don't want to ask them to not be on the phone because, you know, when you talk to loved ones, like the last thing that you want to do is for somebody to interrupt you while they're filming a video. So I'm not going to ask them to stop talking on the phone, and I really apologize for the noise outside. So today's video is a February wrap up, and I actually didn't expect to read another 5 books, but 5 is kind of like my deciding factor of whether or not I should have a wrap up for the month. So if you saw my last video, I did say that I don't read that many books, and I've decided that if I read at least 5 books, then I will do a wrap up for that month. But if I don't read 5 books, if I read less than 5 books, then I'm just gonna roll over those books into the next month and like do like a joint wrap up, I guess. I did read 5 books this month, and honestly I'm kind of in a reading slump right now, so we'll see how March goes. But February I did end up reading 5 books before I got into my slump. Let me double check my Goodreads because stuff's not adding up. Okay, so apparently I only read 4 books, which I'm really sorry about, but you get to see my wonderful face talking about these books anyway. So the first book that I read in 2020, this video is gonna be so chaotic because like I really don't have my thoughts together. So the first book that I read in February is called Pachinko, and it's by Min Jin Lee, and this is a historical fiction novel, and probably the first historical fiction novel that I've ever read. So this book follows 4 generations of a Korean family who lives in Japan throughout colonization, the war, and the splitting of Korea into 2 separate nations. And this family deals with a lot of racism. They're very poor in the beginning of the story, and I think it also deals really heavily with identity. What I like about this book is that I learned a lot about Korean culture and history in this book, and I don't know if this will be the same for everyone, but right now I'm in a queer Korea class. Some of that class also talks about history, and obviously you need to give some context to some of the stuff that is covered in class. A lot of the things that I learned in my class I could apply in this book, and the theme of identity is super prominent throughout this book. And I also saw that there was a theme about how women are meant to suffer, like that is talked about in the book. But I think it would also really help if you do want to learn more about like Korean culture and stuff, if you already are like watching videos or if you're in a class about Korean culture, then this book will really help you get into like the mindset or the lifestyles that Koreans back then had to deal with. Yeah, I highly recommend this book for anyone who wants to learn more about Asian or Korean culture. For Pachinko, I rate it a 5 out of 5 stars. The second book that I read for the month of February was Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones. This book is not what I expected it to be. So I've watched the movie. Naturally, I'm obsessed with the movie. I was really excited to read this book, but for some reason it just didn't excite me as much as the movie did. There's a few differences between the movie and the book. One of them, like right off the bat, Sophie has 2 sisters, not just one. And I think the biggest difference between the book and the movie is that the book centers more on the Witch of the Waste as being like the villain of the book, whereas in the movie the villain is like the looming war over them. So like they're kind of just like pacifists in the war. I still think this is one of those things that the movie was, I want to say, better than the book. I really like the changes that they made on the movie, like in the story that they did in the movie. But this book has a lot more characters in the book, and you kind of learn a little bit more about Howl in the book. I think it was really interesting to read this book and learn a little bit more about the world that they live in. So I do recommend this to people who are fans of the movie, like who really love the movie. So for Howl's Moving Castle, I rate it a 4 out of 5 stars because I think it could have been better, but it's still great. So the next book is actually a short story that I was supposed to read for one of my classes, And normally I don't include the readings that I have to read for my classes, but for some reason this one really resonated with me. It kind of like, I'll explain why, but I don't normally include these kinds of stories in, you know, in my Goodreads and stuff like that. But I thought that this was pretty interesting, so I decided to include it in like the books that I've read. And this is called In the Penal Colony by Franz Kafka. And basically the short story is about an explorer who decides to visit a penal colony, and one of the officers in this colony is explaining an apparatus that is designed to torture and execute a prisoner who disobeys one of their laws. This story talks about the unjust judicial system within this colony. The reason why I included this is because this short story was so horrifying to read that it actually made me like grimace as I was reading it. I was reading it like, ooh, like this is pretty disgusting. So like I said, I don't normally include the stories that we're supposed to read for my classes, but this one really stuck out to me, and I give it a 5 out of 5 stars. Just because like of the reaction that I got from it. Like it's just so descriptive and disgusting that I was like, if it evokes that sort of reaction from me, I think it is a really good thing to read for some reason. I'm just weird, I guess. So the last book that I read is probably gonna be one of my favorite books of all time, and that is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. So this is one of the classics that I've been really excited to read, and I finished it a couple weeks ago. And if you're not familiar with Frankenstein, it's about a guy who discovers how to create life, and so he does, and then the monster that he creates is just hideous, so he abandons it, and the creature is basically left to fend for himself. And after becoming aware of his miserable existence, he seeks revenge on his own creator. I thought that this book was so incredibly beautiful, and I really sympathized with the monster. I actually thought that Frankenstein, the man who created, he's not a doctor, he's like a medical student or something like that. He actually like drops out of college and stuff, so, but just to make things easier, we'll call him Dr. Frankenstein. Honestly, I really thought he was like the dumbest character ever, but I thought it was funny to read about him and stuff. But anyway, like I thought this book was so beautiful, and I really sympathized with the monster. I thought that this book dealt a lot with prejudice. There was a few things that I highlighted in the book that stuck out as prejudice to me. I think it also dealt a lot with like friendship and stuff. But besides that, this book is really beautifully written in my opinion, so I think everyone should read it, and I give it a 5 out of 5 stars. So that is it for all of the books that I read in February, and it's not a lot. This is kind of normal for me. This is the normal amount that I read in a month, but I think I would have read more if I didn't get into a reading slump towards the end. I haven't really been feeling like reading, as you saw probably from my last video, which was a reading vlog, but it wasn't really a reading vlog because I didn't end up reading in that vlog. But yeah, hopefully soon I get back into reading, but I'm not putting too much pressure on myself to read because that just like makes it less fun. Maybe soon I can get out of my slump, but other than that, I hope you guys have a wonderful day. If you have any video suggestions or any like book suggestions for me to get out of my slump, I would really love to hear them in the comments. If you like this video, don't forget to leave a like because that helps me out so much. If you've been watching a few of my videos and you really like my content, if you're enjoying my content, please consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell so you can get notified every time I upload. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!